Welcome to the latest Detroit Lions Lone Wolves podcast. I'm the Doc, John Macaroon. Christian Boer is here as well. After Detroit Lions rookie minicamp, we've had a chance to digest everything that happened. I'm very curious to kind of recap everything that occurred over the weekend. The news surrounding the Detroit Lions, always intriguing, interesting, especially when we got a chance. I was out there at Allen Park at the team's performance center to get a first glimpse of the Detroit Lions rookies. And man, it was a great experience to be out there. You get your first look at Isaac TeSlaa as a player. What's he going to look like? How does he appear and compete against his contemporaries, young players trying to make the team? You get a chance to see a little bit of Tyleik Williams. You get a chance to see the athleticism of the rookie class. And I think what a lot of people are going to talk about, we're going to talk about each individual top pick here in just a few moments. But what was interesting to me was the fact that the offensive linemen, I think, are going to have a chance sooner rather than later to have an immediate impact on the Detroit Lions. So that was one of my takeaways, seeing Tate Ratledge play at guard and at center, Miles Frazier getting his work in, the defensive back, Dan Jackson, was out there showcasing his abilities out there in coverage. And so rookie minicamp, look, it's a pared down kind of walkthrough version of a practice, but it's the first opportunity to get a look at Ahmed Hassanin out there at Allen Park, moving around, calling out what he needs to, seeing his athleticism, seeing how he looks in drills. So early on, you just get an early look, a first glimpse of what's going on with the Detroit Lions. From your reading and what you observed and learned, what did you take away from rookie minicamp that Friday at Allen Park?
Well, the biggest thing from rookie minicamp is it really gets you excited to see the rest of the offseason program, and it really fires you up to see what's going to happen once the shoulder pads come on, because the tough part about analyzing something like rookie minicamp is that it's non-contact, and so a lot of your offensive and defensive linemen can't really show what they're all about. But with that being said, you got to see Isaac TeSlaa out there in 7-on-7 drills and 1-on-1s and things like that. Got to see him compete a little bit as kind of the Lions' lone offensive skill guy that they drafted. Obviously, it lends it. Oh, and Lovett too, Dominic Lovett, which it sounds like he was pretty good on special teams. He looked pretty smooth out there. That could be a ticket for him to get some playing time early on if he ends up further down the depth chart at the wide receiver position. But I also think that rookie minicamp is also a lot about the undrafted free agents who kind of round out that minicamp roster. Cole Snyder, the Eastern Michigan product, was the lone quarterback on roster. You got to see him throw it around a little bit. You got a couple of running backs, Anthony Tyus and Kai Robichaud, who are both physical kind of power backs. A lot of interesting names to keep tabs on moving on throughout the rest of the offseason program. So yeah, rookie minicamp, very much a watered down version of what's to come, be it OTAs or training camp. But if anything else, it really gets you excited and fired up about what's to come.
Yeah, it is. It's an opportunity. Like I said, a first look, first eval of some of the talent. Unfortunately, one of the players that everybody wanted to observe was Tyleik Williams, the number 28 overall pick, having played a long season at Ohio State. He was there for an early portion of a team period, but then when it went to individual drills, it was a situation in which Williams was limited. So right away, once practice was over, during the drills, we would see him working on the side with trainers, and he was running the Matt Patricia Hill. If you're familiar with Allen Park, if you guys get a chance to go out there, at the very far corner of the practice facility, the two football fields, the hills that Matt Patricia installed are still there. And you'll oftentimes see players go out there and run it and for conditioning. So he was doing work and spent some time there. So right after practice, we get a chance to meet Tyleik a little bit one-on-one. And he's asked right away, what happened? Why are you limited? Now, some people were speculating and looking at the fact that he's kind of documented that he's been dealing with a hamstring in the past, but he came out right away and said, look, I'm good. I'm healthy. It's a team decision. I played a long season at Ohio State. And similarly, this is not new because that's kind of how Ennis Rakestraw kind of started along, where he was dealing with stuff and they didn't want to rush him along when he got out to the football field his first time out. So he indicated that he's good, that it was a team decision because it's going to be a long year And so they did not want to rush him out there, especially if he's not maybe exactly ready to go. So look, it's one of those deals where it's team decision, and he feels like he was out there and ready. And I do think that we got a chance to see a little bit of his size and what we're going to get with a player of his caliber. Clearly, what Ray Agnew said was, we like his run stuffing ability. He's going to clog the middle. But what was interesting was the fact that Brad Holmes and Ray Agnew have said, sneakily, his pass rush is a little bit underrated. So I do think that there's room for growth to see what he can do in terms of winning battles, getting in the gaps, and maintaining his responsibilities. But I'm curious to see what he could do as a pass rusher. How do you see his potential just based on the film work that you did? You clearly know he's a run stuffer, but I'm interested in your take on, do you think he could become somewhat of a player that can get to 5 to 8 sacks a year as a individual that can rush the passer?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the tip of the ceiling for him would be that 5 to 8, potentially even 10 sack range. And I think that's if he slides to the 3 technique. I think just based on the workload that nose tackles see and the amount of bodies they see and double teams and things like that, if he sticks long term at nose tackle, it's going to be tough for him to consistently get in that 8 to 10, 7-ish sack range. But I mean, even if that's the case, if he unlocks his full potential, that's going to be a guy that at the very least is racking up a ton of pressures and opening things up for other guys on the defensive line. I do think he's got a lot of potential in that area. I think if he can continue to convert speed to power, just with how quickly he gets off the line of scrimmage, I think that there is an avenue for him to be a huge piece on that defensive line. As far as him being limited in rookie minicamp, I don't think that's anything to really read in too much. He was very open about why they were limiting him. He said it didn't have anything to do with injuries. And another portion of that is the fact that, like we said, it's non-contact practice. There's not going to be a whole lot for him to do in terms of like team period. Yes, there's one-on-one stuff and there's different things you can work through in one-on-ones without getting to necessarily the point of contact. But as far as what he's going to be able to do overall, there's just not a ton for him in a non-contact practice. So I think that this is a smart thing for the Lions. Limit him now so that when you get into mini camp and you're putting shoulder pads on and going through work with shoulder pads and shorts and shells and that thing, he can be more of a participant and a contributor. And then, like you said, he was doing conditioning work when he wasn't out there getting reps. And I think that's only going to bode well for him so that he's in really good shape when training camp rolls around and they throw the pads on and they're going full contact. So I'm not too worried about Tyleik Williams right now. And I do think that he's got a pretty high ceiling, and I'm excited to see him get rolling once training camp starts.
Yeah, what's interesting is looking at potential rotations. Okay, you clearly think that he's going to be out there early, sooner rather than later. When, maybe in the second quarter of the season or the third quarter, when Alim McNeill returns, how do you see that four-man defensive front potentially looking? You see potentially Aiden Hutchinson on one side, maybe Marcus Davenport on the other. How do you see the interior looking with a combination? Do you see potentially a four-man front of Aiden Hutchinson, Tyleik Williams, DJ Reader, and Marcus Davenport? Or, do you say potentially that Alim McNeill mixes with somebody else? How do you see the potential rotation? Because I would love to see a four-man front on certain downs. Aiden Hutchinson, Tyleik Williams, Alim McNeill, and Davenport. That would be also unique at certain spots. How do you see potential rotations with Tyleik fitting in the mix?
Yeah, I think that early on for him, it's going to be first and second downs. He's going to be out there. I do think that you've got options because of his athleticism. I think with Alim McNeill out, you could see him playing with DJ Reader or Roy Lopez. I think that gives your defensive line a lot of volume on first and second downs where teams love to run the ball. So I think that's really the way he gets on the field early on. And then when McNeill gets back, it's all going to be rotational where maybe he doesn't start the game, but if a team that they're playing goes on a drive where they get 2 or 3 first downs, he'll start to cycle in and play on early downs and base downs. And then once he figures it out as a pass rusher, that's when it really opens up for him to be an every down player. I don't know that he physically is going to be able to withstand playing every down in the NFL at this present juncture. Some draft analysts have said that he's going to need to slim down or drop a little bit of weight to get to that point where he can be an every down player. But we saw Alim McNeill do that after his second season, and now Alim McNeill is an every down player. So I think with the Lions, if they choose to keep Tyleik Williams as their nose tackle, then they're not going to put too much pressure on him to, slim down, get all this agility, like whatever. But if his role is going to be a rotational 3-tech with McNeil, then I think you're going to see him, they're going to try to slim him down a little bit, get him a little bit more agile so that he can be that type of player. So I think one of the great things about Tyleik Williams is that you have all these options with him right now. And I'm really excited to see how the Lions decide how to formulate his role right away. I think right now, like I said, early downs, run first downs, and then anything you get as a pass rush producer is a bonus. So that's kind of where my thoughts are on Tyleik Williams right now.
Yeah, it gives you a lot of options for Casey Rogers and Calvin Shepard. I think, too, you got to mix in Levi Onwuzurike, Josh Pascal, Mekhi Wingo, and Roy Lopez. That gives you a lot of options in different situations to mix and match. So that's another thing to observe at Lions on SI as we look at OTAs and upcoming training camp, is to see the rotations and to see who's lining up next to who. It'll be interesting to see the complement as the different players play at different spots along the defensive line. It's going to be really intriguing, especially with Aiden Hutchinson working his way back slowly, and you have the depth behind. It's not a bad defensive line when you look at the starting potential of the 4-man front and certain nickel packages as well, NASCAR packages, things that you can do against the blitz and the run at certain spots where there's an advantageous spot there. So it's an opportunity to do a lot of different things, and I think that the Lions will take advantage. What's intriguing, Christian, is that draft analysts might have some confirmation bias with the Lions' 3rd-round pick. When you invest, in essence, 3 draft picks, 3 third-round picks to move up 32 spots for a wide receiver, I can see why people are going to put Isaac TeSlaa under the microscope. But look, I think he's a player that, in essence, is a gritty individual that clearly, when we went out there, Ray Agnew spoke to reporters, and he was discussing the strengths of each of the Lions' 7 selections. You can check it out at Lions on SI. But clearly, a player that is going to get a lot of attention is an offensive skill position from Arkansas. You don't see a lot of general managers make the leap to give up that much capital for a player of his skill set. But early on, he was targeted, and he showcased what he's about. He showcased that he's somebody that is a big body target. He is somebody that can have a big catch radius. He's somebody that I think that, knowing that a team gave up that much, kind of has a chip on his shoulder, that I want to prove that my hometown team that invested in me wants to prove that he can be a player that can be productive. But it's interesting with draft analysts to look at, and what happened was a clip surfaced of 1 rep where it kind of showcased a little bit of what some of the pre-draft discussion was, is that his separation is not the best. But for one single draft analyst to say that Lions fans should be concerned is a little bit interesting, in that I do think that Isaac TeSlaa is going to develop under the coaching staff of the Detroit Lions. I think that the coaching staff is going to work to he's not a finished product. He's going to work to increase his route tree. He's going to work to develop his ability to be savvy and run great routes to get open. There's going to be some coaching involved. But I do think that people want an immediate impact from an offensive skill position player. I get that. But I do want to preface it that I think that he's going to start the year as wide receiver 4. And no matter what he does, unless he gets lucky, I think he's going to finish the year as wide receiver 4. I think that you have talent in Tim Patrick, Jamison Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I don't think that there's a immediate need for him to come in and light the world on fire. So he's not a 1st or 2nd round pick. He's a 3rd round pick. Yeah, the investment was big, but I found it interesting that a draft analyst wanted to confirm off of 1 rep some of the stuff that, yes, everyone's talking about. Ray Agnew indicated that, yeah, he's not a finished product. He's got to work on his route running. He didn't kind of run exactly the full route tree at Arkansas, and that he's got some issues, some things to continue to work on. Every player has strengths and weaknesses, but I do understand Isaac TeSlaa is under the microscope, and I can see a little bit of some angst with some people wondering, hey, why did a team invest that much in a player that maybe still has some things to continue, some maybe a ways to go to get to where his peak could be?
Yeah, I mean, the beauty of it is that you can draft somebody who still has areas to grow, and that's why you have coaches, right? That's why you have front office people who help these players develop. So, like I said, I'm not by any means pressing the panic button based on 1 video on social media, although I do believe last time I checked that video did have 1 million views, which is wild. But again, that just shows how starved the fan base is for football content at this time of year. So yeah, I do think that obviously there are areas where he needs to grow. One of them being just simply working against press coverage. As somebody who didn't play a ton on the outside, he didn't have to see that a whole lot. As a slot receiver, you don't get pressed too often, especially given the fact that you're off the line of scrimmage on a lot of snaps. So I do think that that's an area he's going to have to work as far as getting off the line of scrimmage and then separating down the field. But again, the Lions trust Scotty Montgomery to go out there and do his job and develop this guy. And Scotty Montgomery, the work he did with the running backs coach proved the fact that he's an excellent coach. And I know that the position change could be cause for a little bit of concern, but I think that at the end of the day, coaching's coaching, and Scotty Montgomery's going to do a really good job developing him. As far as his role early on, I think that you're right. Either that wide receiver 4 or depending on certain packages, Khalif Raymond could bump ahead of him, and he's maybe the 5th wide receiver behind St. Brown, J-Mo, Tim Patrick, and Khalif. But I do think by the end of the year, there's an opportunity for him to slide in and get a lot more snaps as kind of that wide receiver 3 if he goes out there and owns his opportunities that he gets early on. And if he can be consistent and reliable, he'll climb up that depth chart. He could be the wide receiver 3 by the end of the year.
Now, a player that I think has caught the attention of a lot of media and the fan base is Tate Ratledge. Early on, made some noise too when it was seen that he was taking snaps at center. Many people early on thought that Miles Frazier could be the initial replacement down the road, but when you see Ratledge and his skill set, that might present an opportunity down the road for a great player. But I do think that his future is going to be at right guard or left guard. I think he can play multiple spots, but you want to have opportunities to cross-train these offensive linemen. But I'm intrigued that I think Tate Ratledge has a chance where either side, if you start the year, I would not complain if the Lions started the year with Taylor Decker on the left side, Christian Mahogany as the left guard, Frank Ragnow as the center, Tate Ratledge as the right guard, and pair him next to Penei Sewell. That works. And you can mix and match Mahogany at different spots against different opponents. But I'm intrigued by the competition level that's going to take place in training camp with Tate Ratledge and Miles Frazier and Graham Glasgow. Those 3 are going to have an opportunity to battle. I think there's 4 players for 2 guard spots. So there's going to be some intrigue for a couple of these guys to have opportunities to play guard and to do some things. So I'm very intrigued with the offensive line matchup. What did you make of hearing and reading? And then look, we know that the team is going to cross-train all offensive linemen. Even the undrafted free agents are going to have opportunities to play at different spots. But it's intriguing. What are your thoughts potentially of Tate Ratledge at center?
Yeah, I do think that this was one of the more intriguing things that at least caught my eye when I was going through and looking at all the different observations. And the reason for that is the fact that they last year brought in Kingsley Agwakun, who was a center as an undrafted free agent, and he did not make the final roster, but he did stick around on the practice squad and was one of those guys that they scooped back up in reserve and futures contracts during the offseason. And so to see the fact that he was moved off of center to left guard, and it could just be as simple as, hey, we're trying to get him snaps out here on day one and just see where it goes. And then to see if there's something, whether he's a natural at the position or he just can't pick it up. And then you can kind of make your decision on whether or not that's something you want to pursue. But I am intrigued by the fact that they would go to him and move Agwakun off of center to left guard. And I get they're just trying to cross-training, and that's why I'm tempering my expectations a little bit. But I'm just very interested by the fact that they would do that on day one. So I'm really, really, really intrigued to see if this is something they pursue moving forward or if this is a complete afterthought by the second session OTAs and he's not taking any snaps at center. The Lions brought in another undrafted free agent in Leaf Fautanu this year, and he's another guy I figured would probably get some snaps there, and I'm sure he will over the course of the offseason. But to see it being Ratledge on day one was very interesting to me. So again, I'm looking to see, is this something they pursue, or is this just kind of a box they're trying to check and see if there's anything there? I don't know yet, and that's what makes the offseason so fun is things like this, so that we can see how it all plays out.
Yeah, the offensive line is going to be very integral, and we'll have an opportunity this week to talk to Hank Fraley, so make sure you stay tuned to Lions on SI as we bring you what the coaches are saying from this week. Both offensive, defensive coaches will speak to the media, so it'll be a fun opportunity to learn about how different fits take place and stuff like that. So it's always intriguing when you start to see the early potential lineups that could take place. And don't sleep on Miles Frazier. He'll compete for opportunities as well. So clearly, I think one of the early takeaways of the Lions camp is that Graham Glasgow is going to have some work to do to compete for his job, which is a good thing. I think that's what you really, truly want in the definition of competition is that, hey, young guys are always coming for your job, and that should put the notice on Graham Glasgow that you got to step it up in 2025. Turning our attention to the schedule. It's something that everybody's paying attention to this week. It's going to take place Wednesday. We'll have a comprehensive recap. You can check out the landing page. It's going to drop soon at Lions on SI for all your rumors, understanding of what's going on, what's being talked about, leaks. It's going to be a fun couple days. But early on Monday, it was revealed on the Today Show that the Dallas Cowboys are going to travel to Lincoln Financial to play the Eagles, not the Lions. I'm okay with it. I don't think that there's any issue with the fact that the Lions are not going to face the Eagles to start week one on that Thursday primetime game. I'm okay with that. I do think the fan base is intrigued by the opportunity maybe to play the Bears at home in primetime, maybe go out on the road to the Commanders. Many people are intrigued by the opportunity. Now let's start with this. Are you okay with the Eagles not being the first opponent? Because you look at it and you say, many people are like, do you really want Jared Goff to go out to play at Lincoln Financial in an important game in December? I'm like, no, I hope the game is scheduled in like October or November. But I'm curious, would it have been maybe an easier path for the Lions to get a win if the game was week one? Because I can see where it's a preseason game. You're still getting your feet wet, but at the same token, you are getting your feet wet and you might not play your best game. So I'm looking at maybe a second quarter season kind of game between weeks 4 and 8 would be great for the Lions to have their best opportunity to beat the Eagles. What do you think about it?
That is ideal. You put it any time before December when the weather can start to be a really big issue and there's snow coming down. I remember the one Lions game at Philly when I was younger. I can't remember the exact year, but I'm sure everybody will know what I'm talking about. Just the blizzard down there, and Kelvin Johnson's got snow in his visor, and it's just all sorts of crazy. Like, I want no part of that. If I'm a Lions fan, like, there's no way that goes well, in my opinion, just because of how they've struggled in the outdoors at times. And again, sometimes they've overcome the elements, but I do think that is like the least conducive environment to success for the Lions. So yeah, give it to me somewhere October, maybe early November, maybe some rain, something like that. Like the Lions have proven they can do that, but the snow is just a different beast. And the quality of football in the snow is not the greatest either overall. So I'd rather see them go to Lincoln Financial in October, November, early on in the season. But at the same time, knowing that how the schedule makers love the intrigue and the drama. I mean, they played the 49ers in, what was it, week 17 last year on Monday Night Football? Because that was the NFC Championship game rematch. Obviously the 49ers had to deal with a ton of injuries, but, at full strength, maybe that's a game that carries a lot of weight in the playoffs. So I would not be surprised if the Lions are going out to Philly in the second to last week of the year in prime time, because that matchup could have potentially the number one seed in the NFC on the line. It's a long season, injuries and health, none of that's guaranteed, but at full strength, these are the two of the best teams in the NFL. And so I think this will be a game that they schedule late in the year because of all the intrigue it carry as it pertains to playoff seeding and things of that nature.
Yeah, the game took place early in the history of the Detroit Sports Podcast, the year we debuted, 2013, week 14. You can check the highlights. Yeah, the sliding, the slipping, the sliding, the snow in the face. The Lions-Eagles rivalry is starting to develop because of both teams mirroring each other in terms of quality of draft, quality of talent across the board. So it'll be a fun matchup to see Jalen Hurts match up against Jared Goff and to match which the Lions offensive line against the Eagles defensive line. I think a lot of people would be very intrigued. So looking at the schedule, I'm curious what jumps out at you in terms of who the Lions could face on Thanksgiving. How many primetime games do you think? And who do you want the Lions to open the season against? I do think that a lot of fans want the Bears. They want to see the drama between Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson. I'm intrigued by that to see which game the Lions do end up playing week one. Another thing that the Lions have to get lucky at is they cannot have a bye week after week 4. You need a week 7, 8 bye so you can play a handful of games, learn about your team, get that week off. That bye week is going to be critical to find out where that is. And I'm curious, which team is it going to be on Thanksgiving? Is it going to be a rival like the Vikings? Is it going to be the Steelers? Is it potentially going to be a team like the Giants that comes in with some national appeal with a young quarterback and the history between Dan and the head coach of the Giants? So Brian Daboll, they've had joint practices against each other. So there's some storylines galore. In your opinion, let's start with this. Who should the Lions open the season against?
So for me, I have a couple of different options. I know the one that I would like to see the most, and that's the Chicago Bears. You wrote about it. I think that them coming to Ford Field in week 1 would bring so much energy and excitement. I think it would be the atmosphere would be a ton of fun. I think that when you think about Ben Johnson, obviously Ben Johnson is somebody who is a huge part of the Lions' success over the past couple seasons, right? He was a mastermind. He was the offensive guru. They couldn't stop his offenses for large chunks, and they were so creative with the trick plays and things of that nature. But he's the enemy now. He's the enemy now. And I think that you can acknowledge the fact that he was a huge part of what the Lions have done over the past couple of years, while also acknowledging the fact that he is now a division rival, and you have to beat him. You have no choice. And if you're a big Ben Johnson guy and you're a Lions fan, you can root for him in 15 other games this year. But this is a showdown with the Lions, his former team. And I think that, he could potentially get the Matt Stafford treatment almost, because of the way that fans kind of, booed Stafford and things of that nature. Obviously, like I said, you can acknowledge the fact that Ben Johnson did an excellent job for the Lions, and he is a huge part of them being where they are right now. But at the same time, division rival. I don't know. Maybe I'm in the wrong for that take, but I don't know. What say you? What do you think about the potential matchup with the Bears, and how will Ben Johnson be received in his first trip to Ford Field?
Booed unmercilessly. It would be
Yeah.
great. That's why people want to see it. I think it might have a chance to happen. I think that the fact that I think people are more accepting of Aaron Glenn going to the Jets because he's in the AFC. I think people are very much offended that Ben Johnson went to the Bears. So the drama level would be at an all-time high. I think it would be great. It would be intriguing. Some fans was interesting, wanted the Lions to go to Chicago and quiet the Bears on week 1. Go march right into Soldier Field and take down the Bears to quiet all the hype that they typically get in the offseason. Would be interesting. What do you want to see on Thanksgiving?
So with Thanksgiving, they've played division rivals each of the last 2 years. It was the Packers 2 years ago, the Bears last year. So that makes Minnesota the natural. If you're going to continue on that divisional rotation, it would be Minnesota. I think that would be a ton of fun. That was my number 1 game in my ranking of my top 3 choices for the Lions on Thanksgiving. I know the division rival angle gets boring, and maybe some of the more casual fans want to see the Lions play somebody not in their own division, or maybe somebody a little bit more exciting. But I do think when you look at the Lions' schedule, that home slate kind of lacks the flair of the road games that they're going to have to play. And I wish you could swap out 1 or 2 of the home games for the road games so that you could get a team like Kansas City or Baltimore coming in here for Thanksgiving. But unfortunately, the Lions have to go to both of those places. So Minnesota's my pick number 1. I think the Vikings are going to be super interesting. They've made a ton of moves to bolster the trenches on both sides of the ball this offseason. It almost makes you think they're gearing up to try and combat the Lions style of play with some of the guys they brought in at the defensive tackle position and on the offensive line. And they have so many skill guys that can hurt you, but I think that it's all going to boil down to J.J. McCarthy. And I think that a lot of Lions fans who have that crossover of being Michigan fans are kind of feeling that weight of, okay, this is a guy who took our Wolverines to a national title, but now he's the enemy, right? So I think that when you look at a potential Thanksgiving matchup with J.J. McCarthy, that could be a lot of fun. And then also, if Aaron Rodgers, and I know the Aaron Rodgers saga never ends, and it may never end, and we may be talking about where's he going to sign in like 2037, but Aaron Rodgers, if he goes to the Steelers, give me the Steelers on Thanksgiving, and let the Lions fans take a crack at Aaron Rodgers coming back to Ford Field after all the years that he tormented the Lions on the Packers, and now he's coming in as a veteran quarterback who may be on his last leg to Ford Field in front of a sold-out Lions fans on Thanksgiving. It ain't no fun when the rabbit got the gun when Aaron Rodgers walks in against a Lions team that has, in the 2 years he's been away from Green Bay, has all of a sudden become one of the NFC's best teams. So if he comes to the Steelers, give me the Steelers on Thanksgiving. What say you?
Yeah, that sounds good. I like the Steelers. I like the opportunity that the storylines present. Maybe the Packers as well. Maybe the Bears as well could be that team to really hype up the national attention as they both maybe sit together as Ben and Dan sit across from each other. There could be some interesting content, and they could play it up and joke around and have fun with the whole idea. So I do expect the Lions to have their fair share of primetime games when they're going to play on Thursday night, Sunday night football, Monday night football. It'll be a fun opportunity. I would love to see Monday night football, Lions, Ravens in October. Would be great. Great opportunity, great drama. I do think there's a lot of opportunities for the Detroit Lions to be showcased this year. And I think the ratings and their success on primetime the last couple of years will make the Lions a candidate to be featured in primetime quite a bit. And we'll come back on Thursday, probably Thursday afternoon, and we'll have our comprehensive recap of the schedule, the bye week, our thoughts on where different teams stand. And make sure you follow Lions on SI as we do our win-loss prediction right away, our thoughts on the schedule. Make sure you keep checking in with Lions on SI all throughout the week as the schedule takes place, and we can recap and analyze one of the big moments on the NFL calendar, the NFL schedule release. One last thought here. I thought that Brad Holmes going back to NCAT to give a commencement speech was really impactful. I thought seeing him address the young students there and really just talking about, look, when he working with in an executive role, works with the Lions and does a lot of work with Rod Wood and trying to run the business side of the Lions, that, hey, there are things that you want in your staffers. You want people you can rely on. You want people that are hardworking. And he gave really a nice, solid commencement speech. It was also interesting to learn about his background. And we could kind of get a sense of why he is so, against maybe some of the speculation about the draft or his picks, is that he's got a journalism degree. He's got a journalism background that he wants to stick to the facts and just wait and see and then report. So this whole thing is, obviously him working in PR, he knows some of the ways of the media, and he's more of the, approach of like, hey, here are the facts. Here's what we can present. You don't have all the facts, so don't comment on it. And that's the sign of a journalist, is like, hey, we're not going to opine on things that we don't know exactly everything about. But, it's 2025, man. We talk about whatever the hell we want to talk about. And we talk about football, speculation, rumors, innuendos, things that are crazy, not crazy. I mean, come on. It's 2025. So I saw that. I'm like, oh, that's why Brad's a journalist. And he worked in PR. I understand all that. He wants to, keep things spun the right way, not spinning like a top, like some would be prone to do. He probably saw that draft analyst is like, huh? Already? He's like, off of one clip? And that draft analyst got 1 million views off of that opinion because the Lions fans jumped right down his throat, like, what are you talking about? So that's sports, because this is not news. This is sports. Sports is about debate, emotion, firing things up, speculating, and water cooler talk. So it's interesting. But his speech, in regards to, clearly those kind of speeches are intended to rile up students to be motivated, work hard, take the hard road. And clearly you and I, working in this industry, working in the media, working in a competitive landscape, is one in which I understand taking the hard road. Starting as a podcaster is no easy feat when half the world doesn't even think you're legitimate in anything that you do. So it's a fun experience to be now successful and covering an NFL team at the highest level. So what did you make of the commencement speech? You got a chance to check it out as well as I did. I thought it was impactful. And I think that Brad Holmes giving a speech to students definitely should get, if you have any gumption, guts, you got any emotion in you, you got some fire, you would listen to that speech. Now some of the clips are starting to make their way on the internet. You would take that and be motivated to be the best version of yourself that you can be.
Yeah, I had the good fortune of sitting down Saturday evening. Kind of the Tigers game was on in the background, and I was watching that speech, and it made me want to get up and go outside and run a couple miles. Like he did, and you could tell there was a lot of passion, being the fact that he played football there, he went to school there, and then now he's trying to give back to the next generation of graduates from a place that he's very proud of. And that was a lot of the genesis, especially at the end of his speech, just talking about being proud of where he came from. And as you graduate from somewhere, you should be proud of where you came from, and all the different things that you had to go through while you were there have helped build you into who you are. I think that there was a lot of good things that he said and conveyed throughout his speech. I really enjoyed listening to it. And, it makes you think of when I was graduating from college a couple of years ago, it would have been awesome to have Brad Holmes come and talk because he did a really, really good job. And I also think that's a nice thing about the Lions coaching staff is that they give back. And him being an alumni of that school, he could have just, turned his nose up at whatever request was made of him to go speak there. But he goes back and he goes back home and he talks there. And that university means a lot to him and his family. And I think that was really cool for all the students that got to be there, for all the alumni and faculty that were there as well. And then for him to go and give back like that, I thought that was really special.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, he's Christian. He's a proud Chippewa from CMU. And I'm John Macaroon, a proud Spartan from MSU. Thankful that I can rescue Christian from his education and give him an opportunity to cover the National Football League at the highest level. Podcast. That's right. That's what we're trying to do. Raise our game, raise our stakes, raise our standards each and every week. And your comment about Chippewa football resonated. It was very interesting. Chippewa football is back. Definitely had some impact on the internet. So that was good. Be bold, be brave, take the hard road. And even though you went to Central, you stand there proud that you went there. And I'm proud that, you're part of the team as always. And we could have a little bit of fun with the growing MSU CMU rivalry. And also too, the reason why I'm hard on CMU is that you guys have upset us a couple of times that really embarrassed the Spartans throughout my time watching competitive sports. The losses to CMU definitely resonated, and we're expected to dominate CMU. And the times that they didn't definitely resonates with me. I can't wait to fire it up next time. Probably again, we'll recap the whole schedule, top to bottom, the bye week, primetime games, everything. We'll probably drop the next Lions on SI Lone Wolves podcast on Thursday. But in the meantime, read Christian's work. Great opinions, great analysis. Definitely not one of those draft analysts that fires from the hip. He definitely does his research and gives you informed knowledge. That's why he's part of the Lone Wolves podcast and a long time, maybe going on 6th season now, 5-6 years working at Lions on SI. I can't wait to talk about the schedule. It's going to be a fun week. Make sure you stay tuned. And again, the new Detroit Lions on SI YouTube page. Thanks for the interaction. The early subscribers the numbers are good. We appreciate all the support. And I can't wait to talk to Christian next week or in a couple days to recap the schedule.